Vas-y, ça a commencé.
So good evening, guys. Welcome to this webinar about discrimination. Munji, and these are my colleagues. Next to me, there is Salwa Al-Kilani, and next to her, there is Mohammed Azouzi, and then there's Mohammed Hajjaj, and Ayman Ma'ziwi. As we all know, discrimination in the workplace occurs when an employee experiences harsh or unfair treatment, religion, or even gender. So discrimination is one of the biggest problems that people face in the workplace today. Be dealt with forcefully. So there are different ways of discrimination that can occur within the workplace. One of the ways of expressing discrimination is denying one a job, for example, because of their race or their gender. There's also another example of discrimination in the workplace, which is fairly because of their race or gender. So this kind of problems can lead to people discrimination to quitting their job or possibly doing something harmful to themselves or to the provokers. Another example of discrimination can be, for example, gender discrimination against women. Men are more in today's society. They receive more jobs than women do. Workplace, it is much harder for women to get the same, even though they had the same academic curriculum. And most of the time, if a woman gets a job above a man, she will receive a much lower salary, for example. There's also sexual harassment in the workplace, which is also a form of discrimination. Then there is also religious discrimination, where, for example, employers refuse to hire or promote some religious background. Or sometimes they impose stricter promotion requirements for persons for a certain religion. And there's also racial discrimination, which is about, like, for example, employees try to set some strict rules or policies that place this group at a disadvantage. So my teammates are going to talk more in detail about each type of this discrimination. I'm gonna let the floor to my colleague Salwa to start talking about harassment in the workplace.
So, workplace harassment is a form of discrimination that violates federal regulations. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission as unwelcome or physical behavior that is based on race, color, religion, sex, including pregnancy, gender identity, nationality, age, physical or mental disability, or genetic information. Harassment becomes unlawful when injuring the offensive conduct becomes a prerequisite to continued employment. The conduct is severe or pervasive enough that a reasonable person would consider the workplace intimidating, hostile, or abusive. Also, if a supervisor's harassment results in an obvious change in the employee's salary or status, this conduct would be considered unlawful workplace harassment. So the components of workplace harassment may include offensive jokes, name calling, physical assault or threat, intimidation, insults, offensive pictures, and isn't limited to sexual harassment and doesn't preclude harassment between two people of the same gender. The harasser can be your boss, a supervisor in another department, a co-worker, or even an unemployee. So now I'm gonna talk about types of harassment. The first one is physical harassment. Sex uniform is one form of widely known physical harassment. Um, Sexual assault in the workplace has gained media and academic attention, majorly in the 90s after a series of famous sex scandals. With this cascade of sex scandals, the media and scholars have focused on developing more studies on sexual harassment in workplace. Assault, assault become difficult to define as the distinction between sexual harassment and consensual sexual behaviors is not finely delineated. Patients a higher tolerance to sexual behavior, a higher tolerance to sexual behavior such as waitresses and the tour guide. More specifically, the employers for these occupations expect the workers to comply with the level sexual interactions the workers would have with the customers. Uh, Another form of physical harassment at work, workplace violence. Workplace violence is defined as physical threats and assault targeted at employees. The second type of harassment is the emotional harassment. Unlike physical harassment, emotional harassment is unnoticeable and also viewed as being more socially acceptable. Naturally, emotional harassment in the workplace gets less attention than physical harassment in the workplace, which perpetuates the issue of emotional harassment in the workplace. In short, this harassment is manipulation of people's actions through social behaviors. One common form of emotional harassment in the workplace is bullying, also known as mobbing. Workplace bullying is a long-lasting, escalated conflict with frequent harassing actions systematically aimed at a target person. Uh, Specific actions of workplace bullying include the following: false accusation of mistakes and errors, and other intimidating nonverbal behaviors. Shouting or yelling and screaming, exclusion, and the silent treatment. So now I'm gonna let my friend Ayman talk about gender.
What the fuck? It's Susie. Okay, so now we are going to talk about racism in the workplace. Racism, for those who don't know, is a belief or doctrine that inherent differences among the various human racial groups and that determine cultural or individual achievement. usually involving the idea that one's own race is superior and has the right to dominate others, or that a particular racial group is inferior to others. Racism can be as race or color, nationality, including citizenship, or ethnic or national origins. So now I'm going to give some ideas or some tips to prevent racism in the workplace. First, you can write an anti-discrimination policy that specifically addresses racism, including consequences for acts of racism in the workplace. Then you can hire employees from all races and ethnic groups to create a diverse workforce. Inform job candidates before hiring them of your policy against racism and discrimination in any form. You can also promote employees based on merit without considering race or other irrelevant factors. Train employees how to avoid discrimination and racism. Hold the training at least once a year to remind employees of how to conduct themselves in the workplace. Establish a committee in the workplace that focuses on anti-racism projects. Use the committee to identify potential discrimination issues based on race to begin finding solutions. Hold team building sessions that give employees a chance to learn more about one another, including brainstorming sessions that value all ideas. Treat all instances of racism the same according to the established policy. This lets the victims know you will handle the situation and all employees that you won't tolerate the behavior. Encourage open communication with employees so they are more likely to report racism. And finally, establish an anonymous reporting system that allows employees to report racism without fear or retaliation. So those tips were for managers to prevent racism in the workplace. Now I'm going to give some tips for the employees. So first, document any and all incidents of racism that happen to you in the workplace or that you witness. Write down names, dates, times, and detailed description of what occurred. If you have physical evidence, hold on to it in a secure place, such as a locked fireproof box. Secondly, report each racist incident that occurs to your supervisor, union steward, or both. Talk about the incidents with anyone you trust, particularly if they have gone through something similar. This can help you through an otherwise difficult emotional process. And finally, file format complaints through whatever system is available in your workplace or union. If necessary, hire a lawyer who specializes in discrimination cases and file a lawsuit. Present the lawyer with all your documentation and evidence of the racist incidents that have occurred. And now I'm going to leave the floor to my colleagues to talk about another type of discrimination in the workplace.
Hey guys, I'm going to talk about individuals differently in their employment because of their religious beliefs and practices. They have the right to practice any religion he wants to do so freely. He has to be treated based on his and efforts he puts into his work rather than his religious background. There are three major forms of discrimination. The religious one. There are typically three main forms of religious discrimination in the workplace. The first one is employment decisions, religious preferences. This could be refusing to hire an employee because he or she is a Seventh-day Adventist or Orthodox Jew and observes the Saturday Sabbath. Firing an employee after he or she misses work to observe a religious holiday, and an employee only if she is willing to attend church regularly. Transferring an employee to a position with less public contact because he is a Rastafarian who wears dreadlocks, for example, and not giving an employee a raise until he stops discussing religious beliefs with others in free time, such as breaks. The second, harassment based on religious preferences. Example, harassing individuals due to their religion can include making fun of employees or telling them they are violating the camp because they wear religious clothing such as hijab, yarmulks, and turbans. Repeatedly mocking persons because he's or her strong Christian beliefs, ridiculing Muslim employee for refusing pork at a company picnic, for example, and making it to save the soul of a fellow employee who is an atheist. The third and the final one is failing to reasonably accommodate religious practices. For example, denial of religious accommodation is the most common form of workplace religious discrimination, requiring an employee to work on his Sunday, Sabbath, even though other employees are willing to trade shifts with him. Employee to remove their hijab or the scarf to to display religious icons or other experience religious belief in their workspaces, although employees are allowed to display other types of personal items. Prohibited actions by employer. So what should an employer not do on his job? First of all, he should not refuse to recruit, hire, or promote a person because of their religion, imposing more of a different work requirements on an employee because of religious beliefs or practices, imposing strict promotion requirements for persons of a certain religion, and refusing to hire an applicant solely because he or she doesn't share the employer's religious beliefs, excluding applicants from hire merely because he may need a reasonable accommodation that could be provided, absence, undue hardship, and finally excluding applicants from consideration for hire simply because they have name associated with a particular religion. My last part is what can I do if I'm being discriminated against or denied an accommodation for my religious practices in the workplace? First of all, if you continue to be denied an accommodation after a reasonable request, you may want to file a grievance. Try to get legal help. Try to get an official union to help you through the grievance process. And last but not least, try to get help from Human Resources Department. They are so useful. My part is finished, and I'm gonna let you with Ayman to finish the webinar.
So, gender inequality is a type of sex discrimination which results in a particular individual being treated because of their gender. This is something which has overwhelmed women in the workplace for a long time now and still persists despite bounds women's rights. It must also be noted gender inequality women have to deal men who have had to deal with this issue too. In age, it seems anachronistic for men to constantly earn more than women across a variety of different. So the mere fact that this trend still exists is indicative of the fact that there are before gender inequality is eliminated. So gender inequality represents a persistent problem. It is defined as a phenomenon when an individual is discriminated against or receives unequal treatment to their gender. It is something which has emerged out of perceptionally constructed roles for each. In the workplace, it is the most women to encounter some form of gender biases. This problem persists. Women have made numerous strides toward gender greater equality in the last 50 years. companies also make potential efforts to encourage diversity and equality. But none of that changes that women will occupy lower paying positions and constantly earn less than their male counterparts through gender barriers, and more of them are choosing careers in dominated fields in engineering, and yet for all of their efforts, they're recognized and rewarded less than men. The gender bias is not only unfair, it's ultimately detrimental to performance as well. So what exactly is gender inequality? By gender inequality, it is important to remember that a person must be treated fairly based on their sex. This is as opposed to merely being treated differently. Here is an example to illustrate the difference. Bathrooms in an office for males and females, the two sexes being, when hiring decisions or to promotion or continued employees gender, then they are being treated unequally. So some reasons for the disparity or inequality is still a problem that in today's. Here's a few reasons why. In order to advance in or careers, expected to put in long hours to demonstrate just how committed they are. The amount they are willing to put in paints a picture of how ambitious they are. In some jobs, and employees might even real different locations, either in the country or internationally. For women, some of these things can, for instance, relocate possible due to work. In addition, there is necessarily a limit to how much time women can put in at work, especially if they have families which they need to take care of. Since women are still the primary caregivers in most families, the amount of time they can devote to their job may not be considered to get the same benefits as men. So, persistent gender bias. While it is true that outright discrimination against women in the workplace is no longer the norm, there are certain second biases that still exist with respect to gender roles. First generation biases are those which result in international discrimination. On the other hand, discrimination is defined as powerful yet often invisible barriers to women's advancement that arise from cultural beliefs about gender, as well as workplace structures, patterns of interaction that inadvertently. So why strive for equality in the workplace? For people who have never experienced gender inequality in the workplace, it might be challenging to understand why in the workplace is important. Equality isn't just as women. Workplace gender equality is also directly related to the overall economy of corporations and in general the whole country. Where there is gender workplace, there's better note, stronger reputations for company built upon fairness and increased inflow of high candidates for the job, better overall in corporations. What gender equality in the workplace should look like, ideally, in order to achieve equality in the workplace, companies should strive to provide broadly the same outcomes and privileges to both men and women. Some of the features of this will include for the jobs or roles which are the same, no barriers for women to participate fully in the workplace, no discrimination against women with regards to their family and caregiving responsibilities, leadership positions. So for companies serious about inequality in the workplace, here are a few things that can be done. Start with diversifying the training process. Training is essential at all levels of an organization for employees to become educated about the advantages. This helps to reduce gender biases and stereotypes. Second thing is to foster all-inclusive work environments. Encourage women to enter fields which might have traditionally been eliminate hostility in the workplace. Third thing is to encourage mentorships. Roles can play a huge role to inspiring and recruiting all talented and driven. Gender inequality is a problem that many women still face in the workplace. The best way to eradicate this problem is to increase awareness about its existence in order to dispel any lingering gender biases which may exist. Once that is done, strides can be made towards offering the same opportunities, salaries, and position as their male counterparts. Thank you. Now I'm going to leave the floor for Amal, this webinar.
So as you guys can see, there's many types of discrimination related to the workplace. Employees may be subject to discrimination because of their religious background or their gender. So this causes a real problem within the workplace, and it causes a harmful and unproductive work environment. So this is a problem that should be dealt with forcefully, yeah, to avoid a harmful workplace and make it more productive and without discrimination. Guys have any opinion or questions to share, you're welcome to keep that in the comment section. We thank you for attending to this live webinar. We hope you enjoyed it, guys, and thank you.